Everyone, what's going on? On September 15th, the Cleveland Indians clinched their division by beating the Detroit Tigers with a score of 15-0. And if you've been following my channel all summer, I have been talking about the Cleveland Indians possibly being in the World Series because of their connections through these symbols and signs, and also through what is called gematria, which is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And in 2016, I even predicted the Indians to play the Cubs in the World Series because of this same thing. And, sometimes you can possibly read it wrong. Some of the themes are overlapping, but, such as the big theme this year in our mainstream media is the kneeling during the national anthem, and all of that stuff, standing during the national anthem, got popular in the 1918 World Series. That was the Cubs versus the Red Sox, just before World War I came to an end and whatnot. So, and then in 1948, the last time the Indians won the World Series, they beat the Boston Red Sox in a one-game playoff to go on to win the World Series over the Boston Braves, right? And there's a whole lot of other things that are going along with it, Babe Ruth also died in 1948, right? And think about Babe Ruth, the Curse of the Bambino, the Red Sox, and he died the same day Aretha Franklin died this year, same day Elvis died. There's a huge riddle with it. So it's all interrelated. That's why the Braves are having a good season, because I'm pretty sure it's synced up to the Cleveland Indians. And just look at some of my other videos and you'll understand more of what I'm saying. But the Indians clinched their division, winning 15-0. And in gematria, if you read out World Series, it just so happens to equal 150. A lot like 15-0. So they were playing the Detroit Tigers as well, which is really interesting because what I've been talking about all summer is how the Indians are cursed by the trade of Rocky Colavito in 1960 to the Detroit Tigers. And in satanic gematria, we'll just pull it up here really quick. In satanic gematria, I'm going to turn off Jewish here. Rocky Colavito just so happens to equal 624, and so does Detroit Tigers. They equal 624, and Grover Cleveland even died on 624, and this year we got that fire in Grover Cleveland National Park, and Grover Cleveland also died 108 days before the Cubs won the World Series for the first time in 108 years when they beat the Cleveland Indians in 2016, and much, much more. And in 2016, a big piece was Aroldis Chapman getting traded to the Cubs, and it was synced up to the Indians. He was born on February 28th of 1988, which is the same day that Harvey Keene died, and he's the guy who got traded for Rocky Colavito. 624 here, and that, this big number. And this year on 624, the Indians also played the Detroit Tigers, and the Indians won 12-2, and it was a span of 122 days before the World Series. So there's this big number. There's much, much more with the 624, but this number 624. So I thought I'd go from the date of 624 to the day they clinched the division, and then they played the Detroit Tigers. And it just so happened to be 83 days from 624, also 2 months and 22 days. And that's interesting because Detroit Tigers at gematria just so happened to equal 83. And when the Indians beat the Red Sox in that one-game playoff in 1948, they beat the Red Sox 8-3. And Also, 83 days being 2 months and 22 days, Rocky Colavito was born on the 222nd day of the year. And this year, Cleveland is in its 222nd year of being founded. Also, then the next day after this happened, we got another tie in the NFL. The Vikings versus the Packers tied at 29. Of course, a bunch of significant things with that. You know, the word football equals 29 and so on. But in 2016, we also got 2 ties in the NFL. There's only been 3 times that there's been 2 ties in the NFL, and it was in 2016, or this year, 2016, 1997, and 1986. And in 2016, the Indians made the World Series and lost in 7 games. And in 1997, the Indians made the World Series and lost in 7 games. And in 1986, the Mets beat, I can't even think who the Mets beat, the Boston Red Sox in 7 games. So, you know, every time there's been 2 ties in the NFL, the World Series has went to 7 games, and the Indians have been in the World Series 2 of them times. In 1997, let's see what interesting, in 1997, they were playing, the Indians were playing the Marlins, and because of the World Series, the Miami Dolphins versus Chicago Bears game got pushed back to a Monday night, and that game went to overtime, 33-33 even. So that game went to overtime, and, you know, reminding us of the tie symbolism. And if you were following me in 2016, what I was talking about with the Cubs and the Indians, it was all about tie symbolism. The Cubs were in their 114th season being called the Cubs, and they ended up winning the World Series, getting their 114th win of the season, and they had a tie on September 29th, which was the same day we got the Hoboken train wreck where they said 114 people were injured. And Hoboken is where the first ever baseball game was supposedly played. And the word tie in gematria just so happens to equal 114. And the last time that there was a tie in baseball was in 2005 when the Astros tied the Reds 114 days before the World Series. And the Astros went on to lose in that World Series to the Chicago White Sox, who won for the first time in 88 seasons, or 88 years, one of it. And then curse of the Billy Goat equaled 88, that the Cubs were cursed by in 2016, and so on. That's why the Steve Bartman incident happened, and the Marlins scored 8 runs in the 8th inning, and the Cubs' 88th season at Wrigley, and they had 88 regular season wins that year, because curse of the Billy Goat equaled 88. So the tie symbolism was really important to that. And this year, in regards to all that 114, it's the 114th World Series. And Terry Francona's dad, who played on the Cleveland Indians with Rocky Colavito, the coach of the Indians, right now, his father played for the Indians when Rocky Colavito got traded. And his birthday is November 4th, a lot like 114. And he ended up dying this year, and he died 8 months and 10 days before the World Series. And Rocky Colavito, born on August 10th, 8/10. When Terry Francona lost in the World Series to the Cubs in 2016, he became 11-4 in coaching the World Series. He previously coached the Boston Red Sox to an 8-0 record in the World Series. Right? So now he's 11-4. It's the 114th World Series. His dad was born on 11-4, and his dad just died this year. Synced up to Rocky Colavito. He played with Rocky Colavito. It just seems so fitting for the Cleveland Indians. Also, the first tie this year in the NFL was the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the team that the Cubs tied in 2016 was the Pittsburgh Pirates. And Pittsburgh Pirates equal 228, just like Aroldis Chapman's birthday being 228, the day Harvey Keene died, 228. Even more interesting is that game the Cleveland Browns versus the Pittsburgh Steelers came on 9-9, at the beginning of the 99th NFL season. But notice on that same day, the Cubs game got postponed against Washington, and the Pittsburgh game got postponed against Miami. The only two games that got postponed the same day the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers got a tie was the Cubs and the Pirates, the team that was all about the tie symbolism in 2016, and the number 114. Also, this guy sent me a message on Facebook, and he pointed out all that stuff about the Indians being in the World Series in '97 that went 7 games, and there was 2 ties, and also 2016. But what he pointed out was in 1986, the year the Mets played the Red Sox, the same thing happened. And the Mets have been really important to the Cubs this year. That's why they got Daniel Murphy. The Billy Goat named Murphy was the one who cursed the Cubs and got the curse of the Billy Goat. And then they picked up Daniel Murphy, who was the former New York Met. And earlier in August, there was a Cubs-Mets game that got postponed, and they said it was the first time since 1986, the year the Mets won the World Series. And in regards to all of the kneeling during the national anthem stuff, the Mets beat the Red Sox, right? Remember, the Red Sox beat the Cubs the year it got popular to stand during the national anthem. And Daniel Murphy, even in 2015 when he's in the World Series or whatever with the Mets, he had a controversial statement about the guy named Billy Beans that he didn't like that he was gay. And the reason Francis Scott Key went to Baltimore and then wrote the national anthem there was because he was picking up his friend out of jail named William Beans, right? So Billy Bean and William Beans. And the Boston Braves, who the Indians beat in 1948, even at one point were even called the Boston Bean Eaters. And there's a whole bunch of other things that are going on. That Cleveland fire that I think it began on 8-6, right? Think about the Mets winning in 86 and a bunch of other stuff. It was really important, 147th day, and World Series equals 147. But that World Series was also the 83rd World Series. Think about the word football equals 83. That same day, the Braves and the Indians were the only teams with 83 wins, and the same day of the tie. And think about it. Remember, the Indians beat the Red Sox with an 8-3 score to go on to beat the Boston Braves in the 1948 World Series. Also, what are the odds the same day of this tie, the Red Sox beat the Mets? The Red Sox beat the Mets the same day as this tie even. What are the odds they would even be playing each other? So there's something important to it. The year that the Indians and the Cubs played, that was also the year that Colin Kaepernick originally knelt against the Packers, right? And then the Packers are also a team now that just tied. They tied the Minnesota Vikings, and Minnesota Vikings equal 231, just like national anthem. So it is really important. And remember, just after that, the Falcons and the Patriots played in the Super Bowl later that year, and it was the first Super Bowl that ever went to overtime, and the Patriots won with 34 points, and the word flag equals 34. The word tie also equals 34. The 114th World Series. Colin Rand Kaepernick equals 114. World War, where it became popular, World War that came to an end just after it became popular to stand. World War equals 114. So does Holocaust, so does Pearl Harbor, so does Kim Jong-un. But hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to leave it there. My battery's about dead. I got to go downstairs and I got to work in like 4 hours or something. So I don't know. Maybe I'll make one more video if I charge it up, but have a good one. It's completely shut off, so peace.